Well, it's my great pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning, the Honorable Lori Locascio, who's the Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology and the Director of the National Institutes of Standard and Technology in the Department of Commerce. We're going to have a little fireside chat. But the Undersecretary is really an exceptional national leader, and she's a tireless advocate for the investments needed to accelerate innovation across America, particularly, of course, in sectors like semiconductors, which are, as we've heard already this morning, are a pivotal part of the revitalization and future of regions such as the Indiana-Illinois Innovation Corridor. But she's also pioneering much more, helping to advance the cybersecurity framework, the landmark guidance document for reducing cybersecurity risk, which really has become the benchmark for everyone around the world to follow. Similarly, she's driving efforts to develop the first 3 cryptographic standards designed to resist an attack from quantum computers. We know that's a huge national security issue. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, it's just really a joy and honor to welcome Dr. Locascio here. We've had a long association with the Council on Competitiveness when she was the Vice President of Research at the University of Maryland. She was a very active leader in our CTO initiative of groups of CTOs from industry, university, national labs. And she also played a pivotal role in the first stage of our National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. She co-chaired our very important working group that looked at how to develop and deploy disruptive technologies at scale, which we're talking about today. And I know she made a very special effort to be with us today. So thank you, Dr. Locascio, and welcome you for our discussion. Well, let's just start by talking a little bit, I think we all know, but how important is the mission of NIST? Standards. Standards is not a glamorous topic, but at the end of the day, it's kind of everything. Without standards, we can't be doing any of the things we're talking about in the innovation frontiers. So could you share a little bit about NIST's mission and your role in this very important standard setting process?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I will talk about standards if you promise not to just walk out because I'm talking about standards, because a lot of, we're the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the technology part, people are like, oh, let's talk technology. It's interesting because the standards part, people think, that has to be boring. Actually, standards are really hard, and they underpin trillions of dollars of trade in the United States. And if you are an inventor or an entrepreneur, do I have any here in the room? Standards mean a lot to you because sometimes when international standards are developed, they can be put up as barriers to your technology being sold across the world. So they're really critical. And in the United States, a lot of people don't know that much about their importance. In China, which is our biggest competitor, they do. As a matter of fact, they, by 2025, they wanted to move from being what I would say sort of copying to the innovative society and the innovative culture. And their companies have really come up to meet that demand. And then by 2035, they want their industry to be the gold standards for the world. So they've really laid down the gauntlet and said, okay, now we've got the innovative industries, and now we want to be the standards of the world. And so the United States has held that for a long time. That's why we are so very successful, as we have been leaders in the development of international standards. We can't let that go, and really the importance of that, it cannot be undersold. And so for all the academics in the room, I urge you to think more about standards because it can impact your innovations getting out to the economy.
Thank you. And I know that we have a standards process in the U.S. that has tremendous involvement of the private sector and scientists and engineers. So encouraging leaders to be on the standards committees is very important.
Absolutely. So it's a private sector-led system in the United States. We want all the best experts, everybody who knows, the most, to be sitting at that table, because the best technical solutions win. So we need to have the smartest people there. And so if you're interested at all, reach out to me if you don't know anything about the standards process. It's kind of fun and globally engaging.
So, Lori, let's turn to what's become a tremendous responsibility and I think, an unbelievable opportunity in your leadership role to be the main point person in Department of Commerce with Secretary Raimondo on the CHIPS Plus Science Act. So just share with us a little bit how you have gone about that and what your role is now in folding this out across the country, bringing the investments in, ensuring that it's going to be optimized for our country's future.
When this bill was passed 2 years ago, it was a moment where we all went, what just happened, right? You probably did that too. I mean, it was kind of like, is it going to go? Is it going to go? Is it going to go? And then it was like, whoa, it went, right? Bipartisan, huge, amazing victory for the bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act to be passed and signed into law. So $52 billion, right? That's how much it was worth. $2 billion went to the Department of Defense. We talked about Microelectronics Commons. $200 million to NSF for their workforce development, and $50 billion to the Department of Commerce. And NIST is the lead agency who is managing the $50 billion for the Department of Commerce. And as Undersecretary, I report to the Secretary, who I will tell you is very, very engaged in this. She's not just out there, talking about it. I work with her every single day on this implementation. And the way we think about it is it's the $50 billion for the Department of Commerce is really split into two buckets. That's $39 billion for manufacturing incentives and $11 billion for R&D. And that $11 billion for R&D, while we're so thrilled about all of the work that we're doing in manufacturing incentives, the $11 billion for R&D is really critical as well, because that is what is going to keep the companies here and engaged in the United States. And so we have announced $30 billion in manufacturing incentives. That has unlocked, including the one most recently, SK Hynix here, and that was a fantastic announcement right around the anniversary of the CHIPS and Science Act. But that has unlocked $300 billion in private investment. So this isn't just, taxpayer dollars throwing over the fence. This is really very closely managed to get the taxpayers the best bang for their buck. And as a result of that money, we have all of the leading edge companies now coming to the United States or growing in the United States. The complement to that, of course, then, as I mentioned, is the R&D. And we have announced about $8 billion in our intent of how we want to spend the R&D funding. That includes a new Manufacturing USA Institute and digital twins. It includes a $1.6 billion notice of funding opportunity in advanced packaging, which I think a lot of people in this room, as I've been walking around and talking to people, I think are anxiously awaiting. That's coming shortly. It includes about a couple $100 million in metrology, about $52 million for small business innovation research. And it includes about $5 billion for NatCast, the NSTC, the National Semiconductor Technology Center. But we're building facilities, we're launching new R&D initiatives, and honestly, the most exciting part about it right now is just the energy that it's catalyzing across the country, right? I mean, that's what I think we're seeing, is you come to places like this, and you just see the growth and the potential for even more growth, and that's super fun to participate in.
Well, you mentioned the manufacturing, of course, is at the heart of this, and more of the manufacturing in the U.S., not just the current state of the art, but the future. NIST has always been a leader in manufacturing. When I was in the Commerce Department, we started the NMMIs, the Manufacturing Institutes. So you mentioned the new one in the digital twin that's coming. Share a little bit about how critical it is to link the research and development with the manufacturing at scale and not in fragile enterprises that don't have the resources to scale up to production.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as you said, when you were there, we were already talking about how important it is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And when this particular industry, when the semiconductor industry was born in the United States, we had that really deep, close connection between the innovators on one side and the manufacturers on the other side. So really quickly, you had that handoff between the innovators and the manufacturers. And you could iterate and develop and build. And then when that next great leapfrog idea came, it wasn't a huge surprise to the manufacturers. They could be ready to take it on and move forward and build in this country. And you know, we lost that. We lost that big time. And so what we're trying to do is rebuild that, but also rebuild that connection so that as the great innovations come down the pike that we're hoping for with this $11 billion, we will then see that handoff to the manufacturers in this country who are already working with you. They're already partnering with you. And you're seeing that right now with SK Hynix building with Purdue. You see that ability to, okay, we're going to innovate together, and then we're going to hand it off really seamlessly into manufacturing.
Are you concerned at all that the venture capital industry writ large is not investing in these startup companies in the next generation of production because it takes so much money to scale up to manufacturing? That's a serious issue for the country.
It is a serious issue. It is a very expensive proposition, and so therefore, you know, that's one of the reasons why CHIPS and Science was passed, is the realization that we need places for people to go to do prototyping and testing out new ideas in a less expensive way, and have that accompanying R&D funding to help catalyze that and help them really build out their ideas and experiment with new technologies, which is so expensive, as you mentioned. You know, I think what we're hoping for, we're talking to a lot of venture right now, is to really partner with them. So NSTC is going to have its own venture fund, partnering with other venture capitalists to try to grow and expand that fund so that we can support these ideas coming to fruition in the United States.
Because this is an area you've worked on so much in your career, is how to ensure that the startups that come out of our great research and development actually become businesses that stay and thrive and prosper and are not acquired by our competitors, actually.
Yeah, I'm a failed startup, by the way, so.
Let's talk a little bit about how you manage, and again, this is an area of expertise for NIST that not everybody's aware of, but you do a great job in how you structure and manage the intellectual property in these partnerships. And again, that's another, maybe not as exciting an issue, but like standards, it's core.
Yeah, it is. I mean, right now we are working really hard to think about IP and how we deal with IP with all of the things that we're building right now, including data sharing and really the ideas that are shared in the facilities, but also that are built and developed with our R&D funding. You know, I think when you talked about public-private partnerships, yes. And key to any public-private partnership is making sure you get the IP right. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about the IP and how to get it right. When you know, what's going on right now in Indiana and Illinois, and this public-private partnership, you know, public-private partnership, in my opinion, is really their superpower. And I am sure they think a lot about how to get that right, because it's fundamental to being able to have a good, trusted partnership.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the early accomplishments now of the Act, with some of the funds that have been dispersed, and we know there are things that are being built and will come online. But can you point to some very exciting things that are already showing the value and great potential of this investment in the CHIPS Plus Science and the actual manufacturing?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we've announced over $30 billion. We have a lot more coming. We have roughly $9 billion that that's still rolling out. And on the manufacturing incentive side, We set goals for, by the end of the decade, we will have built leading edge clusters, we'll have attracted new supply chain suppliers to come into the United States, to build here, to develop around these clusters. And we are now, I'm proud to say, on track, as the Honorable Congressman mentioned. We were manufacturing very few of the chips in the United States. We lost that overseas. He mentioned just the percentage of chips globally, but leading edge chips, we were manufacturing 0% in the United States. And now we're on track by the end of the decade to have 20% manufactured in the United States. I mean, that's a massive change. And, if we think about, nobody wants to go back to the COVID discussion. It's such a weird memory at this point, right? But if you think about it, inflationary costs were rising so quickly because of our inability to get chips, our supply chain disruptions. About 30% of the inflationary costs were associated with our lack of ability to get chips for automobiles alone. So huge disruptor. And we are now flipping the switch, building both the mature and current and leading edge, all three of those in the United States. And by the end of the decade, really securing that supply chain for decades to come.
And I would also say you've done a beautiful job in placemaking innovation by ensuring that these investments are not being concentrated. We're getting the resiliency and the redundancy of having capabilities throughout the country. So just share, is there anything in this particular Indiana-Illinois innovation corridor that is different than some of the other parts of the country? I mean, Ohio's a place now for this, and obviously Texas and Idaho. Can you share something?
Okay, so I'm not dumb enough to compare Illinois or Indiana to Ohio.
I'm from Ohio, but I have Indiana roots too.
Or Texas, so I'll just speak to what's going on here. But, we've invested, we have 26 projects. This is just on the manufacturing side. We have 26 projects in 16 different states. And you can really start to see the nucleus of these clusters just growing and developing. Every place that I go, and I've been all over the United States this summer talking as we've announced these investments, everywhere I go, we're looking for, what are you thinking about workforce? How are you going to bring in underrepresented people into your manufacturing facilities? What kind of R&D do you have around it, right? So we talk, we listen. I will say what I just said, I'll repeat, that I do think what you've already got here is magic in terms of that coalition that's developing, the public-private partnership. Again, I really think that is a superpower. You see that in other places, but you're doing it so well here, and I think that's fantastic.
How difficult was it to put together your standards that you've just recently released around the quantum? Where did you get the expertise? That had to have been, because that's never been done before anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that was a long-standing effort. So 2016, we realized that because NIST does have a very robust research and development effort in quantum, a lot of that in partnership with the universities around the United States. And we have 3 Nobel Prize winners in quantum. So we really have thought and worked in the quantum field for a long time. As we were developing and we started to see quantum computing coming, nobody knows when it's going to come, but it's coming, right? The predictions are somewhere between 5 years and 100, but I'm closer to the 5, I think. And in 2016, we started talking to researchers all over the world. And in anticipation of a new quantum computer, we started talking about really the security of information and how people were starting to save information that they collected on the national security side from in other countries in anticipation of them building the first quantum computer to break into the messages that they've intercepted. So we started working with the community talking about post-quantum cryptography. How do you develop protections against a potential quantum computer that's on the horizon. That was 2016. It took this long to come up with new encryption standards that we just released this summer out at the White House. And we are really excited about it. Now what we have to do is get the migration to start going so that we can all start to protect ourselves for that time when the quantum computer comes. We want our information, whether you're sending a private message to somebody, across campus, or talking to the U.S. government about a project, you want that information to stay secure. Protect your IP, right? You need all of these things to stay secure. And so right now it's going to be an expensive migration to these new cryptography standards. But when we get there, it's going to be really important for the safety and security of our data and information.
Lori, I don't want to put you on the spot, but in the last few minutes we have here, you've done an incredible job as the director of NIST, and I've seen many directors come and go in my career, and I think you will be known as one of the very outstanding directors, as Secretary Raimondo will be as the Secretary of Commerce. But if you think of yourself, 5 years down the road, do you see yourself going back to being a researcher? I'm sure universities are going to want to grab you to be a president, but kind of where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Because we hope you'll still be working with us at the Council on Competitiveness.
Oh, first of all, that's such a big compliment coming from you. I have so much respect and admiration for you. So thank you. Yeah, I don't know what my future holds, but I have to tell you, I will be working very hard side by side with the secretary, and at least until January, right? We are really, I would say, all on mode, trying to get this money out the door, trying to make sure that there are lots of opportunities available for applying for these funds. I just heard from somebody who I met in the hallway who said, "Oh my God, you have so much coming out. How can we, there's so much to do, so much to prepare for." And that's exciting, to create all this exciting energy. But I am certain of one thing: I will always love to be working with the Council on Competitiveness. You do amazing work.
Thank you. And we are certainly working hard at the Council. Many of you have helped on this in working very hard to ensure that the science component of CHIPS Plus Science will be fully appropriated. And that bipartisan commitment, we have to make sure that goes forward no matter what. So thank you for your tremendous leadership and being with us. And I know you have to rush right back. So the Undersecretary made a special effort to be here with us this morning. So let's all thank her, and thank you so much for your leadership,
Thank
Lori.
you so much.